It's common practice to delay taking from your Roth IRA in retirement and instead take from your IRAs and your brokerage accounts first. The idea here is to allow your Roth IRA to continue growing tax-free for longer because, compounding. But I've been thinking about this concept lately and I've landed on this question. Why do I need a Roth IRA if I'm never going to use it? After all, you might have saved into your Roth IRA or your Roth 401k throughout your life so that you have tax-free income in retirement, but when you get to retirement, everyone says not to use your Roth and just let it keep growing. So I want to push back on this idea a bit and show you 3 reasons why you should pull from your Roth IRA earlier. The first reason you might want to take money out of your Roth IRA a little bit sooner is to avoid a higher tax rate. So in 2025, the current tax rates are 10%, 12%, 22, 24, and so on. So depending on how much money you have coming in terms of income and your different sources of income, what you've got is you're filling up those different brackets. Obviously, you've got a standard deduction. And yes, these are potentially going to be changing here in 2026. Depends on what the new administration here is going to do in terms of reformation around the tax code, or if they're going to keep things the exact same, or what might be changing. So a lot is going to happen here in 2025. But as it stands today, those are the current tax brackets. So whenever you're thinking about taking money from your accounts in retirement, you have to decide, where do I want to take that from? And part of that question is around, what tax payment are you willing to pay, or how much in tax are you going to pay on those distributions? And we know the 3 different account types. You've got tax deferred being traditional IRA or traditional 401k. You've got tax free being a Roth or Roth 401k. And then you have a brokerage account, which is a taxable account. Those 3 different account types are all taxed differently. So when we focus on taking money out of a Roth IRA, we're able to do that in a tax-free capacity, assuming number one, that you've contributed money to a Roth IRA over time. All those contributions are able to be taken out at any point, regardless of how old you are or how long the account has been open. But if you have any growth or gains that have happened in the account must have been open for 5 years at a minimum, and you must be 59 and a half to access the growth in your Roth IRA. Regardless, anytime you take money out of the account, the principal or what you've contributed always comes out first. So it's a tax-free distribution opportunity for you in retirement. Most of the time, again, people say delay this until later down the road so you can compound and grow this account more over the next 20, 30 years of your retirement. But let's look at an example here to see why you might think about taking from your Roth a little bit sooner to not pay a higher tax rate. So right here, we can see we've got John Sample. I'm going to show you his details here in just a moment, but he's fine in terms of retirement. He's got about $1 million total net worth or so, but a little bit of that is in a Roth IRA, a little bit is in a traditional IRA, and I'm going to show you in just a moment. But you can see he's got no issues retiring. He's got 96% chance of success. I'm not worried about it at all. In fact, he's going to have this much money perhaps left over whenever he passes away. So what is his portfolio constructed of? Well, he's got $15,000 in his bank account. He's got $625,000 in his investments. Of that amount, $500 is in an IRA, and then $125,000 is in his Roth IRA. He also has a home that's worth about $450,000, and it's completely paid for. So no debt here to speak of. In terms of his spending on a monthly basis, he's single. So he just says, hey, Jacob, I need about $3,500 every single month, kind of in total cost. Now, that doesn't include any medical costs. So I've got that factored in differently here. So if before 65, he's already retired, but before 65, it would have been $10,000 per year. But he's also got Medigap policy and his Part B premiums now. So we can look at that in a second in cash flows if we wanted to. But his healthcare costs are external of this $3,500 every single month. He's currently 65 and he is retired. So that's, again, his situation. He's got no other income coming in. He's got some Social Security with about $2,700. That would be what he would get at 67. This is not turned on yet. Right now, we're taking that at 67. And that's about it. He's not saving any money, obviously, because he's not working anymore. And that's pretty much it. So again, that gives him the opportunity to have this chance of success because his cash flows show, hey, I've got more than enough money saved based on my spending to meet my needs. Now, let's take a look at this really fast to see why he might want to pull some money at some point from his Roth IRA. If we look at the tax brackets here in 2025 for a single filer, you can see that the 10% bracket is from $0 to $11,000. We'll call it $12,000. We'll round up there. So from $0 to $12,000 is the 10% tax bracket. Now that's after the deduction. So that's a taxable income amount, not your total AGI. So again, in 2025, the single tax filer standard deduction is $15,000. And if you're 65 or older, you get an extra $2,000 on top of that. So his standard deduction this year in 2025 would be $17,000. So that's something to factor in here. This tax brackets are based on taxable income, not gross amount. You got to factor in whatever deductions you might be getting. Okay, so that's the first bracket, 10%. The next bracket is 12%. What we can see is that the 12% bracket actually tops out at $48,500. I'll just round up there to keep it simple. Now, whenever we go back over to his scenario, we can see that his total expenses are $48,000. Now, his tax payment on that, since it's all coming out of his traditional IRA, is going to be $3,098. Now, he's just paying a federal tax because he lives in Texas, so no state income tax. But you can see that's his total tax payment based on that much money being distributed out of his IRA. It's going to be about $3,098. So technically, his total distribution out of his IRA is going to be $51,000. After we factor in that standard deduction, he's still squarely within that 12% bracket. Now, if he said, hey, Jacob, I've got a car I need to buy. Mine broke down. I've owned it for 10 years. It's basically reached the end of its life. I got to go buy a new car. Well, we don't know anything about new cars nowadays. They're not cheap anymore. So we've got to go find something used, new, whatever he finds. Let's just say it's a $40,000 car so that it's reliable and he can get where he needs to go. And he wants to splurge a little bit. He's retired, so he's wanting to reward himself. $40,000 for a car on top of this amount. That money could come from his IRA if he would like to, but a portion of that $40,000 would now be taxed at the 22% tax rate, right? Because he's got $51,000 of money he's going to spend no matter what this year. If he adds another 40 to that, that would be $91,000. If you subtract out his standard deduction, $74,000 of taxable income at that point. Again, you can see that is going to be above that 12% bracket. So from $74,000 to $48,000, that range, that's going to be $26,000 would be taxed at 22%. Okay. So what we've got to do here is he has to decide, hey, do I want to pull that money from my IRA and pay 22% on $26,000 in this scenario? Or do I want to take that extra 26 or whatever would be above that 12% bracket? Can I take that from my Roth IRA? All the tax I'm paying on the dollars distributed out of my traditional IRA are going to be at the most the 12% tax bracket, and anything above that I'm going to take from my Roth so that it's not taxable at 22%. So that's an example of a scenario where you might decide, hey, I'm going to take this from my Roth IRA so I don't have to pay a 10% higher tax rate, 12 to 22, on this additional funding because I have a one-off expense. So that's something that you should maybe think about as you're evaluating when and where to take money from throughout retirement. Now, the second reason that you might think about taking money out of your Roth IRA in retirement instead of your traditional IRA is if you're trying to reduce or minimize how much tax you're going to pay on your Social Security benefits. Now, if you're new to the channel, maybe you haven't seen this video yet, but I did a video recently, which I'll have linked down in the description below, where I talk about how Social Security taxation works. And in fact, it doesn't work the same as normal income. At most, 85% of your Social Security benefits would ever be taxable. So that's something to factor in, but it could be as low as 0% of your benefits could be taxable. So it's not an 85% tax rate or a 0% tax rate necessarily. That percentage is telling us how much of your benefits could be taxable. So at most 85%, at minimum 0. So if we structure your income from your portfolio in an optimal way, we can reduce your overall tax paid on all of your dollars, but also specifically how much tax you would be paying on your Social Security benefits. So if we go back to his situation, we can see that he's not yet taking his Social Security benefits. So 2026 and 2027, he is not going to have any income there. So Social Security, nothing. Obviously, he's not working or anything else like that. But in 2028, and it says 68, what the software is assuming there is he's going to be 68 by the end of the calendar year. He turns 67 in December. So he's going to have minimal benefits, if any, here in 2027. A first full year is whenever he would be 68 by the end of the calendar year. So that's kind of why it looks funky there, even though he is taking his at 67. But regardless, you can see that his benefits start. So if we go back out to the larger picture, we can see that he needs $51,000 for his expenses. $34,000 of that is going to be from his Social Security benefits, again, $2,700 a month, and his tax payment actually goes down here. So he's going to have more income, perhaps. He's going to need more income, but his total adjusted gross income is actually going to be a little bit lower because of how Social Security taxes work. So again, go check that video out to learn more about that because I'm not going to walk through it in this one. But if we think back to the first reason why he would want to take money from his Roth IRA is to not pay a higher tax rate, the same thing could be true here as well. Let's say he had to pay for that $40,000 car after he's already started his Social Security benefits here in 2026. Well, in this situation, if we added that $40,000 distribution to his normal income out of his IRA, that's going to then push him to pay more tax on his Social Security benefits. So he could take all $40,000 perhaps out of his Roth IRA. His tax on his Social Security benefits are the same, if any, in this situation. And then he doesn't have to pay more tax there, which is a net benefit of higher amount to him. And he gets to use his Roth IRA, pay no tax on that, probably pay no tax on any of his IRA distributions anyway because of how the whole thing works using standard deductions. So that's a really easy way for him to not increase his tax bill to fulfill a need of his by buying that car with $40,000 out of his Roth IRA. So that's the second reason, is if you have a large purchase and you're trying to also maybe find a way to reduce how much you're paying on tax on your Social Security benefits, you might want to think about your Roth IRA and using that appropriately to lower your overall tax bill in those situations. And the final reason that maybe you might want to think about using a Roth IRA for a portion of your retirement income rather than just delaying that into the future is to avoid IRMAA. IRMAA stands for Income Related Monthly Adjustment Amount, and this is an increase on how much your Part B and Part D premiums might be. So if you earn too much money, you could pay a higher insurance premium for your Medicare if you earn too much above certain limits. So if we look at the limits for single folks in 2025, what you've got here is $106,000 or less. If you earn under that amount of money of modified adjusted gross income, then you are going to be paying the normal insurance premiums for Part B and Part D. As soon as you go over that amount, you could be paying a higher premium, and you can see here what those increases might be. And you can also see the brackets both for married, filing jointly, and single. Obviously, in John's situation here, he would be using the single brackets. But if you would have an income, again, if he wants to buy that $40,000 car and he's going to have more income than he needs in that particular year while he's paying for Medicare, then he might want to think about taking from the Roth so that he doesn't have to pay an additional amount in the future. Now, IRMAA is kind of confusing, just to be quite frank with you, because you can see here that it's based on what your income was 2 tax years ago. So in 2025, if you earned $106,000 of modified adjusted gross income in 2023 or more, that's whenever you would have this additional IRMAA surcharge. So it's not based on how much money you earn in this particular year. It's based on what you earned 2 years ago. So in this situation, if John's trying to say, man, I'm going to be well above the current IRMAA brackets, if I do this large distribution for this car purchase of $40,000, I'm going to be well above it for whatever reason. Would it make sense to think about taking at least a portion or some of that out of my Roth so that as these IRMAA brackets increase or adjust over time, in 2 years, I don't want to be above those brackets if I can avoid it. So you're kind of planning for the future, kind of 2 years down the road, what the IRMAA brackets could be at that point. But the decisions you make today in terms of where you pull money from and how you distribute out of your portfolio could affect your premiums on Medicare in the future. So those are 3 different reasons why you might want to take out of your Roth IRA sooner than otherwise expected or otherwise planned, because the most common thing here is just delay Roth distributions forever. That way it keeps growing in perpetuity, that way you have more tax-free money in the future. But my opinion is why not just use the money you have and use the advantages you actually created for yourself? Why delay the advantages forever into the future and never know if you might actually benefit from them? So let me know in the comments, does this resonate? Is this maybe helpful? Share your thoughts or maybe your rebuttals. In fact, I'd love to hear those as well. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.